I can attest to the honesty of Shah Hamad because he's been calling me Your Highness since yesterday. And his honey bunch as well. Friends, I want to put my first hat on as a member of the Baha'i faith. One of the tools that the Baha'i world community uses to help awaken the innate compassion that is in every child ever born is a year of service. When they are in their early teens to late teens, they choose a part of the world and they go there to serve. And with my other hat, as founder of the Virtues Project, in traveling the world, what I have seen is that as we work with many, many faith communities, that even the most troubled and wounded child has a heart of compassion that can be awakened by witnessing the suffering of others. This has been tried in the United States in many schools, inner city schools, when you realize that others need you and that you actually can make a difference. That virtue that is so much emerging as a child moves into the preteens and the teens, which is idealism. Who am I in this world? What is my mark going to be? How do I make a difference? What we have found is that even children that are labeled as bullies can become leaders. Once we say to them, you must find your way of using that power that you have to help other people and lead with integrity. And once you do that, you leave your bullying days behind, because under that anger is a longing for justice and a need for control. And you'll find that a lot of these very controlling children, once you say to them, you know, you have a lot of power with other kids, don't you? Yep. Well, if you wrap that power around service, you will be a leader of your community and you'll be a leader in this school. And the strategies of the Virtues Project, starting with the language of virtues, is a tool that's used by many, many diverse education communities and faith communities. And we have been speaking that language from the beginning of this conference, because the one thread of unity amongst all of us, of every faith, and people who have no particular belief system other than, I want to be a good person, we all believe in courage, honor, justice. That is the unifying essence of who we are. So if we use that language with children, and I'd love to give this audience and whoever's watching some homework for the rest of your life, that you sacrifice, that you give up any words that shame you or anyone else. Those words that some of us heard when we were growing up: stupid, mean, bully, confused, shy, that we drop the labels. And instead, when we see a 2-year-old come over and put their hand on someone's arm because they're crying, that we honor that compassion. Honey, that was so compassionate of you. And that when they are in a place of violence, that first of all, we hear what needs to be heard. We companion them, and then we call them to their peacefulness. So instead of labeling them as bullies, we call them to their innate peacefulness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that this notion of labeling is really the beginning of violence, isn't it?
Yes.
As soon as you try to categorize somebody as something, yes, then the violence has begun. Thank you very much for sharing that.
I had the bounty of being raised in a Baha'i family. And you asked the question, how central is compassion in the beliefs of each of our faiths? And I think for Baha'is, compassion is very much linked to the concept of unity. That Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, said, "You're all the leaves of one tree and the fruits of one branch." And there is a connectedness between every part of that world tree. that we must safeguard and that we must serve. And so it wasn't only a concept in my home. I remember we lived in a very segregated, fancy town. I won't say where, but it was in the United States. And it was sort of the nouveau riche kind of area. And when I went to school and it was lunchtime, there was a line right down the cafeteria. And on one side were the black kids, and on the other side were the white kids. But the Baha'i kids, which was me and my two brothers, refused to be dominated by that. So we sat wherever we wanted with our friends who were on both sides of the line. My parents lived that sense of unity and compassion. It was not just taught to us in words, it was in action, as Eleanor Roosevelt said. And so we would have the most amazing people at our table very often. And people stopping by from Africa, people stopping by from Ireland. We felt very much, because the Baha'i community was smaller in those days, was really a sense of one world family, and we still have that. But I have to tell you that I was so amazed when my own son was 4 years old, and I realized that somehow that sense of unity and responsibility and compassion, that he had received that somehow, that it had been awakened in him. Because, and I hope you'll forgive me for this, my PhD son now, but when he was 4 years old, he was quite a miser, and I worried about it. He would look for money everywhere, and he would put it in a little blue velvet bag that I'd given him, and he counted his money all the time. And if it was time to have ice cream, I'd say, you know, you have your own money, Chris. He would give up ice cream to hold on to this money. And he thought that more was better, so 5 pennies is even better than a dime. He just liked lots of money. He wanted to pile it up. Well, one day, I was watching a television program on, I'm going to, senior moment, but it's one of the international, I think it was a Christian program for helping children in Africa, one of those programs. And he walked into the room, and they were showing these children who were starving. And I went to turn it off. He says, "No, Mommy, I want to see." And we sat and watched together, and he said, "Where are they?" I said, "They're on the other side of the world." He said, "They're hungry." I said, "Yes." He went out of the room, he got his bag, and he said, "Mommy, can I send this money to those children?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then send all of it, Mom." He was 4 years old, and he realized that he was responsible to take care of these children that he saw, because his heart was broken open with compassion. And it is a tradition, and I really believe, friends, that this is one of those unifying threads amongst all of us, that living in the example of the founders of our faiths is always about taking care of each other.